So welcome, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Will Cote. I'm the Parks Program Director for Parks and Trails New York. And on behalf of the entire Parks and Trails New York team, I want to thank you for joining us for the first workshop in our 2021 Friends to Friends series, created to support grassroots friends groups through the sharing of best practices, innovative programming, and collaboration. This series has been specifically designed for friends of New York State parks and historic sites. We're really excited to connect with you today and continue this initiative, which we began last year. This series in particular will feature panelists on a variety of topics designed to increase the capacity and impact of grassroots organizations and provide opportunities for friends to network and share resources. Today's workshop, we were going to be diving into best practices and tips for updating and maximizing your MOA, your Memorandum of Agreement with state parks. Every 5 years, friends groups affiliated with New York State Parks are required to update their MOA with OPRHP. Whether your organization is due for renewal this year or in the near future, there are going to be some new requirements in that application process, and we wanted to go through them with you so you feel confident and ready to do so. But more specifically, we're going to be taking a very close look at the requirement that groups submit a 5-year plan as part of their MOA renewal. We will discuss tips and some strategies for communicating your vision with park or the site manager, and of course, how to leverage that 5-year plan for communication with the broader community and your members. So our hope is that you'll gain some insight into the MOA renewal process and changes, as well as inspiration from today's presenters, and of course, by one another.
All right, so I would like to just start with sharing what we have prepared for you tonight. So first, we'll provide a bit of an introduction to this topic in an effort to create a good foundation for our presenters and subsequent conversations. So we really want to provide a clear background on why that 5-year plan in particular can be a powerful tool for your organization. Then we will transition to our main presentation and welcome our featured panelists, Shari Calnero, the Associate Counsel for the New York Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and Andy Fyfe, Assistant Deputy Commissioner at State Parks, who you are probably familiar with. Andy and Shari will be providing their insights on the MOA process between the OPRHP and friends groups. They will discuss why a 5-year plan and other policies are not only a required part of the MOA renewal process, but also a best practice, as well as State Parks' vision and role in actualizing these plans going forward. After we hear from Shari and Andy, we will dive into some well-established steps for developing a 5-year plan that will not only help you fulfill your MOA renewal this year or in the near future, but also really set your friends group up for success in a myriad of other ways. Then we will turn a spotlight over to our featured friend. Neil Kaplan is here. He's joining us, the Director of Friends of Bannerman Castle Trust. Bannerman Castle Trust has recently submitted a 5-year plan with their MOA renewal, and Neil will be sharing the Friends process in creating this plan. After Neil will share some templates and examples from groups across the state, other groups, not just Bannerman Castle Trust, to help you navigate this process. And finally, we'll allocate the remainder of our time to provide you an opportunity to ask some questions to our panelists. We welcome you to share something you may have encountered or learned in your own efforts to create a 5-year plan, or how you can leverage the plan in other areas of your organization. So I think it's safe to say that most of you are familiar with Zoom, or at least virtual events at this point in the pandemic. But just in case, I just want to go over a few simple housekeeping points. So as Will mentioned, we strongly encourage you to share your questions and thoughts based on what is presented this afternoon by adding them to the chat. So we can address them later during the workshop, during the Q&A portion. So if you don't know, you can find the chat feature on the bottom panel of your screen on Zoom, of course. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, let us know that in the chat as well, and me and Will will be monitoring to help you. Most importantly, we ask that all of you remain muted in an effort to reduce some background noise and really foster an enjoyable experience for everyone. So with that in mind, we welcome you to introduce yourself in the chat now. You can let us know your name, your group affiliation. We also encourage you to share your favorite outdoor summer activity and what you're excited for this summer. So with that, I will turn it back over to Will.
All right, thanks, Jana. My favorite outdoor activity is eating soft serve ice cream. So I'll have to ask Andy if any parks or state sites have a soft serve stand at them, but we can come back to that later. So let's get into the actual business here, and I'll stop joking around here. Before we turn it over to Andy and Shari to talk about the full MOA process and how they see it benefiting both Friends and state parks, I just want to briefly discuss the main focus of today's workshop and what we'll be diving into after Andy and Shari provide this broader context, and that really is the 5-year plan. And so the PTNY Parks team has heard from many Friends groups that the 5-year plan, or what some folks are calling a strategic planning process, is daunting and that they're sort of at a loss in terms of where to start. So the first thing we wanted to do is highlight the difference between a 5-year plan and a strategic plan. So a 5-year plan is essentially the same thing as a strategic plan because the 3 primary goals would be the same. First, it encourages your Friends group to discuss and identify what you want to achieve or where you want to be in the coming years. It helps identify the steps you need to take to accomplish those goals. And perhaps most importantly, it creates methods to track your success and adjust your goals if the circumstances change. So I think for the purposes of this workshop, let's agree to simply drop the word strategic, which can sound overwhelming, and focus on the basics of thinking ahead organizationally. So what do plans focus, or why I should say, do they focus on a 5-year term? So planning only 1 year in advance doesn't give you enough time to adjust your strategy, and you may lose sight of the direction that your Friends group wants to take. If you look out 10 years into the future, you may end up gridlocked, sort of unable to see clearly that far ahead and what circumstances may be relevant at that time. So that's why the 5-year plan isn't necessarily a rule, but rather a sweet spot and a best practice across the nonprofit and for-profit industries. So an analogy that the PTNY Parks team has used is not having a strategic plan is like sailing without a rudder. So without a plan of any sort, you aren't in the boat. You're just in the water, struggling to keep your head above the waves. If you have just a 1-year plan, you're out of the water, you're sort of struggling and you're planning and anticipating the waves, but you don't really know what direction you should swim. You're just doing your best to react to the environment. With a 5-year plan, however, you're not only in the boat, but you can see the point on the horizon that you're trying to aim for, and you have a strategy for sailing your boat in the straightest line as is possible. So, without a 5-year plan, you're at the mercy of the changing winds with very little control over how far you'll drift or where exactly you're going to end up. And so by now you may be thinking, what are the benefits of putting in the effort into creating a 5-year plan? Well, beyond this being a requirement of the MOA renewal, as well as being an essential best practice for nonprofits, it can have a lot of value for your Friends group. So organizations that have a 5-year plan are much more likely to achieve their mission under their established goals than those who do not have a plan. Organizations with plans to guide them not only take control of where they're heading, but they are also better positioned to take advantage of new opportunities and to thrive in even the most challenging of times. So having a 5-year plan makes annual planning a lot easier as well. And it also helps you communicate with your members. It turns that annual planning effort into a work plan, providing the nuts and bolts of how the necessary work will get done and how to allocate your budget for success. So beyond those sort of seemingly obvious but incredibly crucial benefits, having a 5-year plan helps to really foster your membership in your group. It can lead to better communication both internally and externally, strengthen member retention, make budgeting and executing events a bit easier, help secure sponsors and donors, or prepare to seek grant funding like the Park and Trail Partnership Grant. And one thing that we also want to highlight today, which is often something that would be overlooked but is important for our particular work with state parks, is Friends groups with clear plans and visions tend to have a better, stronger, and deeper connection with their park or site manager. So that way there's a clear understanding of what both parties want to achieve. It creates an opportunity for clear communication and a synergistic working relationship. Park staff want Friends to be successful as it benefits the park site and the broader community. Friends need guidance and buy-in from the park's colleagues to help facilitate the goals that your group is trying to achieve. So moreover, just in general, sharing and discussing, creating that positive communication on the 5-year plan fosters that strong working relationship so that Friends know the opportunities and the barriers that park staff may be experiencing or foresee on the horizon that ultimately will affect your plan. So that's sort of the broad context. And with that, without further ado, I want to turn it over to Shari and Andy. Andy is the primary contact for Friends Group with State Parks in Albany, and Shari leads the MOA renewal process for groups. So we'll bring these two experts in. Shari and Andy, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Well, this is Andy. I'm going to kick it off just by stepping back a little and saying thanks to PTNY for hosting this. I think it's a really important topic, and you guys are just this awesome conduit for us, so it's always appreciated. And thanks to each and every. I'm getting my let me know if my connection is not good, because I just got a note that it wasn't. Thanks to every Friends member on this, but also I just want to especially take a shout out to the park staff. It's a super busy time of year. The last I looked, it looked like Elaine Chinian was on the line, Linda Cooper, I think Christine is there, Janet Barone, Chris Kenyon, Laura Tully, and thanks to Nancy Dwyer from the Regional Commission and Friends member long term. So thanks everyone. You know, I'm just gonna keep it my sentiment high level and then ask Shari to chime in. But I just wanted to say that in the last, I've been doing this for about 8 years, 10 years. In the last decade, and especially the last few years, thanks to Shari Calnero, got our MOA process more uniform. We quite frankly, we had different templates. We had different timelines, right? And we've gotten to the 5-year process so that it's a little bit standardized. We've done best practices working with PTNY, and Shari will talk about some of the new policies that have come down from federal and New York State for best practices. And quite frankly, the executive team in Albany saw the need for some planning, right? I like the rudderless analogy. The one I always use from the nonprofit, my nonprofit time is, you know, if you don't go to the grocery store without a shopping list. I don't think most people do. And for our park sites, the goals, the 5-year goals, the 5-year plan. For us though, it really does come down to our site managers and our regional leadership communicating, as Will said, with the site. So it's really about alignment for us. You know, if your historic site or park has a master plan, it's like the key document that we go back to, we check off boxes. So we hope to get there with these 5-year plans. From a high level, they can be different. It depends on the site, but we really want those goals laid out. We really want that alignment. This is a best practice for us. I will mention the manual we did, I think 5 years ago now, but with PTNY, best practice manual, did suggest an annual plan. So I really liked that Will said that's a nice goal to work off of once you have the 5-year plan. So I'm gonna stop there. I know there'll be questions and more time for back and forth, but I think Shari is gonna give a bit of an overview of the key elements of that. I'll turn to you, Shari.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Shari. Even though I'm in the dark, and sorry about the way the light is hitting this room, I'm here to shed some light on this process. So again, thanks to Will and Shana for organizing this and for all of you giving us your time today. And so Andy's talked about the 5-year plan. That's one of the things we're looking for in this renewal process. Definitely something that you should feel free to create with the site manager and also to share with the site manager. And, you know, we recommend regular check-ins and to make sure that both the park and the group are working towards the same goals and objectives. So in addition to the 5-year plan on this renewal cycle, there have been a couple of changes in the law and state agency policies, which come down to basically 3 new things that we're also asking friends groups to supply at the time of renewal. And that's a conflict of interest policy, an anti-discrimination policy or statement, and then a prevention of sexual harassment policy. So the genesis of all of these are laws that have been passed, either not-for-profit law or general executive orders, where we're required to make sure that any entity that we do business with have these 3 things. And it's a way of, we live in I think, a great state of promoting diversity, inclusiveness, fairness. And so as a result of that, every entity we do business with, we want to see affirmatively that they're taking steps to achieve those goals as well. So that's where those requirements come from. And at the time of renewal, we're just checking the box to make sure you have it. And in the end, I think it will promote good governance for all of us. We have samples of the minimum standards. I'm sure Shana and Will can share those with you if we haven't already. And so the templates, you could easily adopt them. Your boards could adopt those templates that meet the minimum standards. So I think that, I don't think it's a very big lift, even though, yes, there are these new things that you have to submit. There's definitely templates out there that can help guide you to comply with federal and state laws. So I'm just going to stop there.
All right. Andy and Shari, we're good to move on. Just want to double check. Okay. All right. So thank you, Shari and Andy, for providing a little bit of an insight. I think it's nice to have a bit of a context of why the MOA renewal process has changed, how it's critically important for the work that we do, and also just generally speaking for nonprofits. So I think it's nice to have that sense and how it can be impactful for friends groups in terms of their relationship with state parks. So with that, let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual process of creating the 5-year plan and how it can serve you. Again, not only for the renewal, but as a tool for actualizing your group's mission. What does the process look like? How involved should it be? Ultimately, these questions are up to you. The form and function of your 5-year plan should be based on what your group envisions for yourself. But in order to help you navigate that process and get the wheels turning, we've gathered some basic steps for creating a 5-year plan that are going to get you started. Again, as Shari alluded to, we are going to have some resources that we're going to provide for you so you can see a wide variety, but they all follow these basic steps. So first and foremost, you want to hone in, laser focus on your group's vision and mission statements. These statements should describe the future state of your friends group. The goal is to get your members or staff excited about the plan and the progress that you'll be making in the future. So keep in mind that your vision and mission statements may change over time, but you'll want your current vision to focus on where you want to be in about 5 years' time. So determine your purpose and position as a friends group. What's the objective? Where does your organization exist? What's the advantage? How do you do things differently, better, or more efficiently? And of course, the scope of it. What should or shouldn't you do to achieve your objective? You may consider referencing similar organizations who you want to emulate. And you always want to consider describing very measurable, specific goals and trying to avoid generalities, which is challenging because it's typically how we form those thoughts on a day in, day out basis. The next step, the second step here, is consider doing a SWOT analysis to determine your objectives. So SWOT is an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's just a way for you to take an honest assessment of what your organization and key team leaders are doing well and what perhaps they could improve upon. So look at the opportunities in place that you can champion or the work that you're already doing, and examine any threats that might prevent you from achieving the goals that you're beginning to envision. The third step would be to define your group's objectives and goals. So objectives are statements that indicate what is critical or important in your strategy. In other words, they're goals you're trying to achieve over the next 5 years. Think of them more as specific offshoots from your mission statement. So one thing that Shane and I have been investigating in terms of this is, what is a sound strategy for those objectives and goals? And we've found that the verb plus adjective plus noun format can be a really useful formula for your strategic objectives, and that they create an action statement for you to follow. So I know we have a couple of examples up here, but one would be to increase plus event plus fundraising, or develop annual giving and programs, or perhaps most concretely, drive folks to the website for X number of donations. So you want to kind of string these thoughts together, these verbs, these adjectives, and these nouns, to create some measurable and actionable objectives and goals for yourself. Fourth step would just simply be to make an action plan. So an effective plan is going to break down your objectives into very clear, actionable steps that clearly communicate the process that you will be taking to achieve the goals. It's really going to be important to frame these as measurable steps that clearly define if success has been achieved or not. And of course, if not, you'll want to do the examination as to why that might be. But it could be as simple as setting a specific time, a number of new members, or a dollar amount that you all have raised. You also want to ensure that your routine or mundane decisions are in line with your 5-year plan, and they are going to help achieve those goals. So don't give yourself more decisions to make that aren't going to ultimately help you get to where you want to be. And for your MOA renewal, this can be as simple as a bulleted list of steps that you want to take each year that will help you achieve the primary objectives. And we are going to go through some examples of that in just a little bit. And the fifth step here, another very important step, often tends to get overlooked, is going to ensure that you have buy-in from across your organization, everyone from the leaders all the way down to volunteers if you can. So everyone in your friends group should know about your 5-year plan. They should know what it is, what it outlines, and perhaps most importantly, you're going to want to get them excited so they buy into the idea of it. So using a good framework and having a solid vision, a mission, and key objectives, it's not going to only allow you to communicate your strategy across the organization really easily, but will be valuable for your external communications as well and your partnership building. So even if your volunteers who only tangentially engage with occasionally are familiar with what your objectives are, they might be able to make those connections for you in the broader park or site community that you wouldn't be able to get on your own had you not communicated it. And then of course you want to revisit, reflect, look back upon. It's incredibly valuable to evaluate the progress towards your goals periodically, especially if any new barriers or hiccups change your trajectory. I'm laughing because we've all come out of the COVID pandemic experience, which threw a significant monkey wrench into everyone's plans. And so that's why if you had a 5-year plan, maybe you're able to salvage some of that, or you can pick it up and move on based on where you are now. So the 5-year plan, as Shari said to us during this planning process, it's really a living document that your organization continues to adjust and maintain. You revisit periodically, and you continue to update that, communicate it with your park and site managers so that everyone's goals and visions are aligned. But of course, it's easy for me to say that. So I wanted to bring in Neil Kaplan, who has already gone through a recent renewal process with State Parks and has ever so graciously agreed to join us to share his group's process for creating a 5-year plan and give us those insights. The Bannerman Council Trust's 5-year plan was identified by State Park staff as having a strong model or a strong template that other groups can emulate. So we're hoping that Neil can share some tips and ideas that will help some other folks. So Neil, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that we did is, first of all, the parks actually gave us an outline as to what they're looking at for a 5-year plan. So that helped a lot. But one of the things that we did is that we discussed goals with our board and our advisory board, and we wrote all this stuff down. So we wanted to know what we were going to do each year. And one of the things that we'd like to do, if any of you've been out to the island, we have the residence has new floors, a new roof. It has a visitor center on the first floor, but it only has about 4 or 5 windows. So we'd like to replace windows, and we had all the plans to do it, but you know, a small window could be $2,500 to you're talking about $5,000. So one of the things we thought we'd like to do is each year add a window till we can eventually get the windows back into that residence. So that would work for us. So that was one of the things that we looked at. And we're also looking to do a plan to help stabilize the structures that are there, because we lost 2.5 of those structures in 2010. 2.5 walls of the tower came down. So we still have on the north side, you still see bannermans like you would have seen it before. And we put braces up, and we did a lot of different things, and we're still doing spot stabilization in there. But when you have a building that you can only get scaffolding up to right above the 2nd floor with regular scaffolding, it's a problem, because scaffolding, when we put the beams up, it cost $140,000 for 8 weeks. So you could have special scaffolding to scan those buildings and so forth. So we have to think about that and how we're going to do it. So one of the things that we're doing, and we hope this works out because we put a grant in for it, is to do a study of how to stabilize the structures. One of the things that we wanted to do from the beginning is to do theater over there, and possibly incorporate a theater. Well, actually, you can see a lawn here that's there. That's one of the spots that it could go. And also inside the structure, that would be a possibility too. One is more expensive than the other, but you'd still have to do more stabilization to those walls before we can allow anybody closer than 100 feet to those structures or close to them. So so we're looking to do a study to support the idea of getting this facility, but one works to the other. So it's going to help stabilize the walls, because if you don't stabilize the walls, you can't do the theater part in there. So that's one of the things that we put in there. Also, expanding the tours, and if you're going to have a theater that has more than 90 seats in it, right now our boat carries 44 at a time. So we'll take 2 boatloads over, but if we have a larger space, we need to add on another boat. And we've also realized that, you know, we had to put engines on the boat about 6 years ago, and to a tune about $28,000. But you only have so many hours on a boat, so you still have to replace engines and stuff. So you have to sort of put all this into your plan so that you can move forward. So we're really lucky. We have an incredible president. His name is Len Warner, and he's an environmental engineer, and he's an incredible writer. So I pretty much went through this plan and went through the key points that the parks was looking for, and I wrote up some things, and then I gave it to Wes. I mean, not to Wes, to Len, and Len he sort of made it really look good, because he's a really incredible grant writer and writer, so much better than I am. And we went from there, and then we showed it to our board, and then we sent it off. And I had a discuss. We did talk to Evan Thompson, who was our parks manager, because I always will talk to him, you know, and we'll touch base with various things that go on. So it kind of worked out well for us. And so now we just have to implement everything. So I don't know what else I can say to you on this, but I do think that there are people at parks that are there that can help you with this. I mean, at least look at it after you're done with it. And I think you should not be afraid to ask for help, because you can do that with things like the sexual harassment and all those things. We kind of had it in there, but we thought that, you know, parks has all these things in place. We might as well use what the parks wants, what they're using, and that makes the most sense for us. So what else can I say to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, so much for sharing your insight, especially that last part. You know, I think that's really important to remember, and that's pertinent for every group. And that's something that Andy touched on, and that Shari touched on, and that we've been touching on this presentation, is really this is a collaborative effort. You know, working with your park staff is important. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That is what they're there for. We want to foster those relationships. So with that being said, in addition to Bannerman Castle Trust, 5-year plan, State Parks sent us over a handful of strong examples from different friends groups across the state. You know, each example really varies in length and style and goals, but they really all do connect back to those best practices and basic steps that we addressed earlier on. So based on those examples, we've put together, this staff, me and Will here, we put together a template that we really hope can help you with your planning. And I will walk you through that template in just a minute. But I wanted to let you know that this will be available to you after the workshop. It will be available on that same website you found to register for these workshops. We'll make sure that every resource we have created or have found will be available to you. So along with, plus this template, we will also add some additional templates, including those SWOT analysis that Will was talking about earlier. We'll add some of those examples too on the website, so it can really help inform your process. So on the right of the presentation here is the first page of the PTNY template. So at the top is where you would add your group's information. After that, you would see designated spots for your vision and mission statements that we talked earlier, as well as your SWOT analysis results, if that's what you've chosen to go through. So the next section is one we have yet to address during the workshop, and that is the introduction to your goals. So the introduction is essentially an elevator pitch of your 5-year plan to really summarize and communicate your goals more easily, both internally and externally. So for that reason, we really suggest filling this out last after having gone through all the remaining other sections. This can act as almost a summary for the entirety of your goals. So communicating with people outside the organization or with your park staff, you can always refer back to this section if you don't want to go through everything. So below this introduction, you'll find the templates really broken down by different categories. So there's fundraising, programming and events, marketing and promotion, communication, there's additional projects, and other. You can't see all of those on that first page, but that template will be available. So we've created some prompts to consider under each category that may or may not be relevant to your group's work. These are not mandates, they're just simply suggestions based off what we've seen on other 5-year plans from friends, and just what we've seen as best practices in general to really focus on as goals and objectives as you go through this process. So it's really just important to try to focus on those actionable and measurable goals that are tied back to your group's vision and mission. So with that, let's walk through a few sections and examples here. So with each goal or objective that you come up with, make sure to think of action items that will lead you to achieving those goals. Really consider using start and end dates so you can hold yourself accountable. Or if it's not start and end dates, it's percentages, it's numbers, it's something that can be measured so you can keep track of it. But some of the prompts we have under fundraising goals, are you expecting, applying for, or seeking any grants in the next 5 years? What are those? What do they look like? What are you expecting as far as membership dues? Will you be doing any membership drives? And gift shop sales, will you be selling any new items? Those kind of things to consider. So one really strong example we found here, this is actually from Bannerman Castle Trust, but let's see, so and it's on the screen too, but in 2022, the Friends of Bannerman Castle Trust will be looking to hire a development fundraiser. They will seek funding for this position through the Park and Trail Partnership Grant to help with this position for the first 2 years. Then they explain what the position would be responsible for. and what they will use to raise funds for specific projects. They also mentioned the salary costs of this person. So this example, it covers all the bases. It's measurable, it has a timeline on it, it says exactly what they're looking to fill, where they will seek the money. So we found that to be a really strong example of a good fundraising goal. They can look back on this and be like, oh, yep, 2022, this is what we're expecting to do. So then programming and events. I know a lot of groups host events or programs throughout the year, but if this category isn't relevant to you, remember these are just suggestions, not mandates. You don't have to fill out this category, but under programming and events, what regular events do you host? What programs? Will these continue, and what is your role in them at the park as a friends group? Are you considering hosting or actively planning new events or programs? Those are good to write down. Or even if there's changes to regular events, those are good to mention. So one example we have here is from the Friends of Schoharie Crossing State Historic Site. So they plan to continue hosting their Not Just for Kids storytelling events on 6 Sundays in late July through mid-September. So there's a specific time frame there, how many they will be doing, when they will be holding them. This is funded yearly by a Saratoga Arts Grant and has been a staple outdoor event for more than 25 years. So this keeps a little piece of history in there too. It says how long they've been doing it, says who they are sponsored by. This event is supported by local businesses and they list those sponsors. And the Friends will continue to contribute refreshments each Sunday. So that's, it directly lists the Friends' role in this event. And then they put their hope in the end here. We hope to expand arts programming at the site in the next 5 years and beyond. The only thing I would consider expanding upon is, if possible, or what steps are being taken towards expanding that programming. What conversations will happen when will brainstorming participate, or if there's any direction they're thinking of taking. Then I'll just go over one last example, and the rest will be available to you. But under marketing and promotion, let's see. Oh, we're here to answer any questions for you. I know there's a Q&A session coming up, but if you have any questions on this template or anything in the future, please let Will or I know and we can help you out. So some prompts, marketing and promotion on the screen here. How will you be using social media to advance your organizational goals? And are you planning any changes or add-ons to your website? At what cost? So the Friends of Mills at Statsburg had a really good example. Short and sweet, not as descriptive and long as the other two, but the goal is just as excellent. They plan to convert a small percentage of their 1,500 Instagram followers to donors through Giving Tuesday, gift shop purchases, and other appeals. So this really describes what areas of fundraising the group will use to target their followers and where they can track their success specifically. Might be useful to provide like a specific percentage so you know what to follow on, but just having that as your goal, if that's where you're at right now, that will be great to look back and be like, we planned on doing that this year, these 3 specific targeted campaigns. So that's really good. So just keep in mind, we've mentioned this a couple times, but this is a living document. It's meant to just serve as a guide. It's not meant to be too intimidating. You just create your goals, make sure your group is on board, communicate your goals with your park and site manager early and often, and use your goals to guide you in all the mundane and exciting aspects of your friends' incredible work. And we know you all are doing incredible work. So this is just a good way to document that, have it, for your group, have it for the people you work with, and then the people you're trying to recruit to your group. So don't just think of this as just a requirement for filling out, this MOA renewal, but this can really help you as an organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Will for some questions.
And actually, I'm going to quickly break away from the established agenda. I'm going to go rogue, which is something she never likes when I do. But we do have Linda Cooper with us today. She is the regional director from the Taconic region. So just given her position and her experience working with friends groups in state parks, I thought it would be nice if she's up for it, that she could just chime in a little bit and share her insights into this topic and the value that a strong 5-year plan has for friends groups and parks in general.
Great, thanks, Will and Shanna. And first, let me start by thanking PTNY. I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to learn and see what's going on statewide. And the best practices guide is awesome. And thank you to Andy Fyfe, who is really trying to make sure that we have the best, absolutely best partnerships that can be had between people who are working on behalf of our parks and those of us who happen to work for really on the payroll of the parks. And again, Shari as our legal, who's kind of helping us guide us in structure. It's really making a difference. And to Neil Kaplan, who is in the Taconic region as part of Hudson Highlands State Park Preserve, Neil and the Bannerman Council Trust do an awesome job. And I'm glad that you broke it down to show how people that the 5-year plan does not have to be intimidating. When I sent out my email to those that were renewing in the last several months, I said, okay, notice there's a request for a 5-year plan. Do not be intimidated. It can be bullets. It can be 1 page. It's just, we really want is for you to sit down with your park manager, sit down with your board, and come together to understand that there are goals and there are plans. There are many master plans and strategic plans in our parks and in our sites. And we want to make sure that the actions that are happening within the friends groups are aligned with the actions of the parks, that you know what are the priorities of the parks, you know where your park manager is focused on, and you know what your board members are interested in, and you figured out where's that commonality and where's your strength and how does it work and how does that all dovetail together. This request for the 5-year plan in bullet points, I think is a really, really important tool to help make sure those interests are aligned. So we thank you for kind of explaining and walking it through so that people are less intimidated by it. And same thing with Shari, who's been able to show that there are, the language on conflict of interest and ethics and everything. We take it very seriously in our parks, and we need every one of our volunteers to take it as seriously because they really are representing our parks as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. Thank you for the insights. And I'm going to go rogue one more time. I saw Elaine Chinian is also with us. I did not mean to skip her. I just sent her a chat saying, do you want to chime in? But I didn't mean to throw the ball to you last second. So Elaine, if you also wanted to chime in as the regional director from the Saratoga Capital Region, that would be wonderful. Or you can say you don't want to, and that's okay too.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Will. Look, Linda, I echo everything Linda said. We're grateful. I thank you to all of the regional folks that are on the call. I'm grateful for your attention to this. We just benefit immeasurably by these partnerships, and I totally agree. I'm a planner by nature. I love forcing that interaction to like do the work to sit down and think what we're really going to accomplish together. So I love it, and I appreciate this call, and I'm on here to take notes and try to make sure that everybody gets the message and insights that you all are sharing. So thank you all, and I thank you, Neil, for your testimonial about your process at Bannerman. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. We will also, just as a reminder, be sending out the recording of this too. So Elaine, if you miss anything,
okay,
don't worry, you'll get the transcript essentially. But all right, so without further ado, and again, we're on time here, but we do want to make some space for some questions and answers. There's a lot we can discuss on this topic and dive into the different aspects. So Shane had the idea of posing a question in advance during registration to see, what folks were really looking to learn about this topic. And so luckily we have a lot of your questions in advance. So, and many of them were the same, which is great. So there's a good chance here that your question will get addressed. And if you do have any other questions, feel free to send them to me in the chat, or you can just post them directly if you would like. So the first question here is, I suppose, is really for Andy or Shari, if you would like to take the first crack at it. And it was posed by the friends from our Long Island City location. So, what can friends groups reasonably expect to get in return from the parks for all of their work? What does the other side of this relationship sort of look like from your perspective?
Shari, do you want to start and then I'll add?
I don't really have anything to say on this topic. You said it so eloquently when we spoke about it yesterday, Andy. So I think I'm going to defer to you on this one.
Okay. I don't remember what I said. I would say, I think that was Rob's question. There's different levels of this, but the most obvious one, the most hit you over the head one is that it helps the alignment with the site. Helps us be eligible for grants, right? So I would think that one immediate, having been on a friends group and then leaving for this job, one thing I know is when you have a plan, really get locked and loaded for not just chasing money, but having a real content when you apply for a grant. So that's one. I think too, the entire MOA process, but specifically the 5-year plan process now, is just really a nonprofit, not just Friends of Parks and Historic Sites. It's a nonprofit best practice for a reason, because you got to know where you're going before you start moving. I know that sounds simplistic, but I think that helps the friends group. So it lifts all the friends. And I'll just say, let me add, I'm seeing something from Rob. Let me just add that if you look nationally at state parks friends groups, just echoing something Linda said, I think we're just awesome. I mean, we have 70 plus groups, every single one of them who loves their site, bringing in a heck of a lot of money, doing a heck of a lot of programming. I think we're competing with California, but we didn't have any money. We didn't have any money for friends groups. There's now $1 million a year on the table, thanks to PTNY's advocacy and your work. So coming in for that grant money is no joke, but it's not definite. It wasn't there before. The EPF could be cut again. So the better we align with the park and historic site goals. So that's my long-winded answer. I'll stop there.
No worries. I know Rob, maybe you just want to, there's a lot to unpack, or if it's an onion, there's a lot of layers to that. I know Rob, you probably have a follow-up question. Do you want to, just one more question to sort of drill down just a little bit further?
Okay. All right. There we go. Thanks, Will. And hello, Team PTNY, and thanks for doing this. Hi, everyone. What I was kind of getting to is, so we do programming and a lot of other things in the state park. I'm wondering if you could put in the MOU that we get priority over certain programming, get a certain amount of dates so we can do something. The other thing that we do, like we're just in the process of buying 4 very expensive picnic tables for the park plus 8 umbrellas. It would be great if we could get some kind of signage, at least on the umbrellas, because obviously it helps us marketing. People see what we're doing, which allows us to raise more money and then put more money back into the park. And on this, because we also deal with the city park, we are able to do that to some extent on a city park. But, some kind of signage, possibly, particularly when you're buying the things for the state park, or some kind of priority in some programming space. I don't know if that's done anywhere else, but that's kind of what I'm getting at.
This is Shari. Well, I guess what I'm hearing is, can you write that into the MOA? I mean, certainly you could write it in, but it seems to me that is, one of the central things that our friends groups do, right, is they do get priority programming generally. And, signage, obviously there's an approval process for signs that go up in our parks, but have you have you had signs designed and made and asked if you could put them up? Was there some issue with getting them put up, or?
Well, basically, we're told we can't. I mean, like I said, like umbrellas, we could have gotten, just like a logo put on the umbrellas that we bought, and we're told that it cannot be done, and so that they don't do that in state parks, so we hadn't really pursued it.
I think that, I think rather than getting the weeds here on this call, maybe you should put this with more detail in an email, because it seems to me that we would, note the efforts of our friends where we could.
Okay.
I mean,
we've spoken about this with our regional director, Leslie Wright. She knows. And,
yeah. So, I mean, yes, there is a statewide wayfinding sign program, and we have, certain colors we have to use and certain, symbols. But it seems to me there's nothing legally prohibiting tipping our hat to a friends group in a sign. So
actually, can I?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Linda. That was my fault. There you go. You're all set. You were next.
So if I could respond a little bit. I think there's a real balancing act, and we run into this a lot. So I think that in terms of programming, there's a balanced interest. How much does the public need? How much do you need? And that has to be a discussion, and that probably has to be a discussion early in the year, so that you know how much you want to reserve and what times and when does that come, and then how does that balance with all the other public uses that are being juggled by the park. And I know that comes up. You're not the only region or the only park that has that, but we don't want to give proprietary use to a friends group, because we really are a place where the public comes to have its walks, its reunions, its other people fundraise, and so there's a for charity events and other kinds of things. So I think that's that's more discussion as opposed to a guaranteed amount of slots, but it's something that if you were having difficulties, it's something to sit down and talk about what it is you were trying to achieve and what it is you haven't been able to accomplish. But the signage one, we spend a fair amount of time trying to make sure our parks are not cluttered and do not have a lot of advertising and lots of signs of attribution for money that's given to them and things like that. We do very small, discrete labels occasionally, and we'll put on some of the bigger interpretive sign panels that are done in the parks branding area. We will put lines that attribute, partnerships in there. But I'm right there with Leslie. We do not want to have every group that donates and does things have their names all over the place, because the park would start to really get junked up. And we generally don't want to have people fundraising off of every single little effort that happens in the park. So there has to just be a better way of approaching it. It's not that that's necessarily bad, but it has some, again, from the aesthetic that we're trying to achieve in the parks. If you could work with the park manager and with the region, maybe there's a different way to achieve exactly what you're trying to achieve without necessarily putting a logo on an umbrella. I'm here at FDR Park right now. We just did a ribbon cutting for our brand new pool. At one point, the concessionaire had put up umbrellas that had Cinzano on it. Those were all replaced with plain brown tan umbrellas. No writing, no anything. I mean, we tried very hard to make it as clean as possible. So I think that's something that's not so much should be codified in an MOA, but ongoing discussion with the park in particular.
Well, I think, Linda, that's a great point. And actually, I will piggyback off of that to our next question from the truly phenomenal Nancy Dwyer. But this is a topic that Andy and I talk about all the time, which is essentially, how do we create more positive communication between the friends groups and park and site staff? Because these conversations, open, honest conversations, help to kind of clarify, where each party is coming from and sort of set a standard. But Nancy's question, and Andy, if you want to elaborate a little bit, what do you really see as the value of friends and their park or site manager, like collaborating and sharing their goals and initiatives? Do you feel like it will lead to better alignment of efforts, or are there other benefits as well?
Great question, Nancy, and a bit of a segue. So, let me say this. Well, I'll go back. I'll beat the horse. So you want to have a 5-year plan because not too many people can go to the grocery store with a list. And in this case, when you come home, you put the food without the list in the fridge. The fridge is actually owned by the state. Actually, the state's fridge. It's taxpayers' fridge. So I think the purpose of alignment is, to Rob's question, to go back to the segue a little. Do you know one of the most common calls, Parks in Albany, Parks headquarters, we have a public affairs team that just answers calls 9 to 5. Where can I camp? One of the most common calls is, how do I get into the Adirondacks? How much is it? How can I camp in the Catskills? So that John Q. Public, Nancy Q. Public, they don't really even often realize the difference between DEC and parks. So also co-branding our friends group it's difficult. It's a really hard challenge because I agree with everything Linda said. And it really comes down to the site manager and the regional director. It's up to them to work these things out. But I will say, I understand the plight of a nonprofit that's in a state park or historic site, because you need to raise your brand, to market yourself, and you need to apply for grants. But I guess where I'm going with this is, if you align, if our site and our friends group align, you can do really amazing stuff, because you go from, well, how to assign, to having the full backing of a very large agency behind you, okay? Or so another example is the social media question comes up all, right? So do we all have our individual social media accounts? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it goes on. And my answer to that is up to you guys, work it out. But just realize, when Parks headquarters puts out a tweet, we have 2 million people looking at it. So we have to start working together and realize we can, we really can raise the banner of the whole Friends Group movement across the state if we work together better. Thanks, Will.
So I know that Neil had raised his hand. I think he wanted to weigh in on that. Neil, it's got to unmute yourself, and then you should be good to go to chime in.
I think one of the ways that a not-for-profit can do this and to get the word out about themselves is to do a journal. And in the journal, you reach out to people for that. And then you can also have your sponsors and your donors in there. You could talk about what you do. So this is something that's like a program you get at the theater, and you have it and you can give it to people. But it's not posted all over park, so that it gives you a way to do something, and it gives your donors and your sponsors someplace that people are acknowledging them.
Thanks, Neil. That's helpful information. I appreciate you sharing that. We had a couple of other questions too that sort of drive back to the larger MOA renewal process. And one of them is really just about the conflicts of interest. And so I know that's a document or a policy that we're encouraging or expecting groups to have. And so I just wanted to see if, Shari maybe, or Andy, if you just kind of wanted to sort of briefly kind of explain why that's important, especially considering a lot of the members of friends groups may also be volunteering or connected with the park site or the park community in a larger sense. So just want to tell us a little bit about the value of the conflict of interest form.
Hi, this is Shari. The value of a conflict of interest policy, first of all, for a not-for-profit corporation, it is now a requirement to have one. And maybe some of our friends groups aren't aware. It's a recent change in New York State law. And in addition, the statute really provides a roadmap for what needs to be in that conflict of interest policy. So it's, like I said before, it's an easy lift, for a group to adopt one. But, basically what it's doing is ensuring that board members and other officials of the corporation are acting ethically. And if they have an interest or a conflict in some kind of business that they're doing in their own life or a member of their family's life, that if there is some conflict with the work that they're doing with the park, that it's identified, disclosed, and managed. So, there's a way to stay above board, if you will. And I know that's very important to state parks, and it should be important to, all of the groups that we do business with. So if you need to talk more about it, I'm happy to, but generally it's a disclosure policy, and there's procedures in there that if there is an interested board member or official, that they're somehow, they don't vote on a certain issue or they're recused. So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think one of the things that we've heard from friends groups and that Shari and Andy and Sheena and I discussed earlier this week is sometimes these terms can be a bit confusing. Sometimes they sound more complicated, maybe they are. But I think at the end of the day, they're best practices because they're ultimately protections for your organization and for your members and your donors, and just making sure you're really, as Shari said, following the best policies and standards. And that's our goal, is to make sure that you have the information to do that. And so I just want to think, we're going to do maybe one more question so that we be mindful of everyone's time. Again, it's a beautiful day, so I want to get you back outside and enjoying that. And so I think we've touched on it, but I wanted to just reiterate again, and I'll ask, maybe Shari or Andy or Neil, since you've also done this, is, where should the Friends group find acceptable language with respect to the conflict of interest and ethics and other policies? Certainly PTNY has some resources that we'll make available. We'll be sharing more today, but where would you suggest folks find those? Should they just do a Google search? That probably seems a little daunting. Do you have any suggestions on where folks should start?
Who do you want to answer?
Well, Neil, you're first. Why not? Yeah, you got. Where did you start that process?
We started.
Actually, I'd like to go first here. I provided some links to PTNY that have all of that are links to templates that contain the state's standards. So, I think that's a great place to start. You can't go wrong, basically. So I would say, Will and Sheena, if you make those links available generally or incorporate them into the next version of best practices, I think that would be a great way to go for the Friends group. So I just wanted to start there, and then Neil, please take it away.
Oh, I was going to say basically the same thing. Start with New York State and find out what they're doing and what they're saying, and then you can work from there. And that's what we did, is we looked at New York State for that. So,
and those links we did add to the chat just ahead of stuff. We added the conflict of interest, the best practices manual, and the sexual harassment policy, if you saw those. But we will also, they'll be in a follow-up email and on the website as well. So don't worry about frantically trying to click on those now. Okay, let's see here. All right. So I think that's it for questions. So I just wanted to take the time to thank you all so much again for joining us. We really hope you found this workshop informative, and we'd love to hear from you and see you at our next few workshops in this Friends to Friends series. So this is the first of hopefully many, but our next workshop, just so you know, is scheduled for July 22nd at 4 p.m. And that will be focused on engaging, recruiting, and retaining volunteers and best practices surrounding that. That's also on the screen. So make sure you check your inbox in the upcoming days for a follow-up email from us. The email will contain the templates we've discussed, a recording of today's workshop, links to other guides and other best practices, and where to find additional resources on our website. So if you would like to connect with one of our panelists or another attendee, please email someone on the PTNY team and we would be happy to connect you. And finally, please stay in touch. You know we love talking to all of you. It's one of my favorite parts of this job is phone calls with friends. So we are here for you. We would be happy to share and promote your events, programs, and answer any questions you may have. If you are not already, follow us on social media. We also have a Friends Facebook group just for Friends of New York State Parks and Historic Sites, where we can continue this conversation and keep others going. And with that, thank you again. We wish you all the best. Have a good rest of your evening. Enjoy this beautiful weather. And hopefully we'll see you next month for our next workshop. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.